Well, we are in the middle of a series that is based on a book of the New Testament called the Book of James. It was written by a guy named James. I'm thinking of doing that more now in the future. I'm like, that's a good way to title your stuff. The name of my sermon tonight is Jason. It is by Jason, but actually James didn't name his book of the Bible that. We called it that so we would remember who wrote it and who it was all about. Tough crowd tonight, note to self, make funnier jokes next time. And the whole premise of the book of James is, what would your life look like practically in real time on the ground if you actually believed the gospel? Now, when I say gospel, what I mean is the fact that the message of Jesus is not, here's some good rules for you to keep and then God will accept you. The message of Jesus is, I have good news. I don't have good rules, I have good news. And the good news is God accepts you because of my life for your life, my past for your past, my deeds for your deeds, my perfection for your sin. The gospel is good news that although you are more wicked than we care to admit, you are more loved and affirmed and validated by God than you thought was possible, and that is through the grace of Jesus Christ who gave his life for you. If that truth, if that news sank deeply into your mind, into your heart, into your soul, how would that begin to change your life? That's what James is all about. Last week, if you missed it, we talked about how the gospel impacts our words, the words that we say, the words that we share, because words are powerful. Hopefully you've had some chance to reflect on some of your words this last week. Tonight we're talking about how the gospel impacts your entire approach to community. Now, I don't know if there's a more timely message for us to talk about tonight than community. Because as we look around our nation, we see a nation that no longer experiences community. We see a broken nation, we see a fragmented nation, a nation divided by racism, by politics, by ideologies, by religions, by philosophies. And instead of maintaining community in spite of differing perspectives on life, what we see is a nation that has broken community with one another, and we see fragmented community throughout society because we're not getting this right, and society is not getting this right, and the result is that community is broken in our world. So you think to yourself, well, that's okay because I know a place where I can go where everyone is all about community and I'm always loved and accepted. I'll go to church. Yet for some of you, your story is that you went to church and you did not feel community. You felt ostracized. You felt judged. You feel shut out because whatever the good rules were, you weren't keeping them right. And so you did not experience community there. Also, you say, okay, well, I know where I'll always be loved and accepted. I'm going home. Yet for many of us, our families, whether it's your immediate family you live with or whether it's extended family that you only see on holidays like July 4th, and now we're thankful that's over and we're back to normal everyday life, the story isn't community. The story is strain and tension in our relationships. Well, tonight we're going to be at the end of James chapter 3 where he explains how wisdom from the gospel impacts the way we live out our lives in community, in society, in the church, and in home. And this is so very practical. And if you do not want to feel convicted, I highly suggest you find a reason to leave right now because James is going to hit us between the eyes with what he has to say tonight. Isn't that a nice way to prepare you to hear God's word? This is going to be hard. Get out if you can. No. James chapter 3, beginning at verse 13. James asks a question. Who is wise and understanding among you? And I thought, okay, show of hands. Who's wise and understanding among you? No one's going to raise their hand because you can't say that, but you believe it, don't you? Because you've thought to yourself at some point in your life, if only my husband would listen to me. If only my kids would do it. If my boss could see things from my perspective, my boss would change the way things are done around here. You have thought to yourself, you can't say this out loud, but you have thought to yourself, I am wise and understanding. James says, fine, great, granted. How does this bear out in your lives? Let them show it, not say it. Show it, not tell other people how to live their lives. Let them show it by their good life, by deeds done in the humility that comes from wisdom. So James says, here's how you know who a wise person is. They're not telling everyone else how to live their lives. A wise person is bearing deeds that are born out of humility. Now, as James is writing this, as he's trying to think of who exemplifies wisdom, who exemplifies deeds done in humility, who would be top at his list? Jesus. Jesus came with the wisdom of heaven. But Jesus did not come to say, you're doing it wrong, you should do it this way, do it my way, I'm better, I'm wiser, you're welcome, good night, see ya. He came to show wisdom. And he did it through deeds born out of humility. Jesus was always so busy, but anytime anybody came up to Jesus and said, Jesus, I have a need, he's like, I have time for you. Like, I have a medical condition. All right, let me help you out. We're hungry. No problem. Let me help you out. Anytime anybody needed something from Jesus, he wasn't too busy. He wasn't too powerful. He wasn't too popular. He didn't say, talk to my guys. You can't get directly to me. He's like, I'm available. Now, to what extreme did he take this? Well, we just read in Philippians chapter 2 that he humbled himself and became obedient to death, even death on a cross, and that's why God exalted him. So James would be picturing, and he wants you to picture Jesus in your mind if you want to look at the example of a wise life, the example of good deeds done out of humility. We think of Jesus. That's what wisdom that leads to healthy community in society, in church, and in home looks like. But, verse 14, but, in other words, he's going to give us the opposite of wisdom, and this destroys community. But if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. Now, envy is the emotion that you feel. And when I say you, I'm not talking to you. You wouldn't do this. I'm talking to the other people here tonight. It's the emotion you feel. It's the bitterness you feel. It's the resentment you feel towards someone else who possesses a quality, an attribute, a characteristic, a relationship, a skill, a possession that you do not have, but you wish you had. I wish I had that job. I wish my kids were in that school. I wish I could fit into those jeans. I wish I was born into that family instead of my broke family. I wish I had gone to that college. I wish I had those opportunities. I wish that I had. And so because they have it and I don't have it, you feel this resentment, you feel this bitterness towards the person who has what you do not have. Now, again, you would never experience this, but you've seen this in other people, haven't you? Now, envy, of all the human emotions, perhaps makes the least sense. And let me explain why. If you feel separation, bitterness, frustration towards someone because they have something you want, you think that they're the problem. If you have something I want and I don't have it and I'm mad at you, I'm acting as if you're the problem. But you're not really my problem. Do you know how you know? Because you can't fix my problem. Okay, if I want what you have, but I can't have it, you can't do anything about that. You can't fix that problem. You can't say, well, yeah, all you need is my DNA and then you can look like me. You can't fix my problem. In fact, if you feel envy, the only thing that someone else can do to help you feel better about yourself is what? They can fail. They can lose what they have. And you say, did you see her at the pool? I think she put on a couple of pounds. You can say, oh, your kids couldn't go to that school anymore. Oh, that's too bad. I'm so sorry. Right? All they can do is fail, and then you feel better about yourself because they no longer have what you wish you had. Now, that means your problem isn't them, is it? That means there is something evil going on in your heart if the only way you can feel better about yourself is for someone else to fail. Now, let me illustrate the other reason why this doesn't make sense. I have 3 kids, three boys, 3 sons. Pray for my wife. I have 3 sons, and I try and be a good dad. So let's say I'm going to be a benevolent father. And I say, kids, after dinner, I'm giving each of you a custom dessert. They're like, oh yeah, that's awesome. Dessert, love it. And I say, firstborn, Firstborn, you are getting a 1-pound bag of red licorice. Here you go, son. He's like, thanks, Dad. You're benevolent. I know, son. Good boy. And then my second son, I say, for you, son, I am heaping up a bowl full of ice cream, and I'm covering it in chocolate sauce and caramel and cherries and whipped cream. Here you go, son. Dad, you are so benevolent. I know, son. And then my youngest, the baby of the family, he's 7 now. He's not quite a baby anymore. I say, son, I've got a special dessert for you. Here is a carrot. Now, a carrot, that's right. When my 7-year-old gets a carrot from my hand, when he has just seen me hand out licorice and ice cream to his 2 older brothers, he will not get bitter at his brothers. He will not get frustrated at his brothers because they have what he wants. Against whom will his frustration be directed? Me. Why? Because the dad giveth and the dad taketh away. That's how dads work. He's 7. He knows where to direct his frustration. Yet for those of us who are adults, when someone has what you wish you had and now you feel incomplete, we don't get what the 7-year-old gets. We get mad at them when the reality is, for those of us who are Christians, who gave them those looks? Who gave them those opportunities? Who gave them those talents? Who put them in that position? Who was it? Who was it? God did, yet you're mad at them. That doesn't make any sense. If you are a Christian, your frustration should not be direct. You should feel great towards them. You should be mad at God for not giving you what you think you deserve. If you're not a Christian but you're a spiritual person, then whatever you think is the higher power, that's where your frustration should be. You know, if you don't believe in God at all, but someone dragged you to the core tonight and said, hey, there's 2 girls there, you might meet someone, you're like, all right, I'll go. And you're here and you don't believe in God at all, I mean, you're welcome here. We're glad you're here. But you have to be mad at the universe because the universe is ripping you off, and however that works, in your approach to life. But getting mad at them makes absolutely no sense. In fact, if you're taking notes, you can fill in this blank. Here's what envy looks like in our lives practically. Envy is this: God owes me, so I hate you. I think God owes me that opportunity. God owes me that possession. God owes me that relationship. And so since God owes me, I'm mad at you. Now, that doesn't make any sense, but it destroys community. And that's how so much of us approach life and approach relationships when we're not getting what we want. James says that is not wisdom, that is godly. That is foolish. In fact, look at what he says next in verse 15. He said, such wisdom does not come down from heaven, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. Now, some of you might say, I know preachers are given to hyperbole and exaggeration. Really demonic. We're going to get back to that in a minute. Hang on to that. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder and every evil practice. Now, twice now, when James talks about envy, he ties something else to it. He says you have envy and what? Selfish ambition. 2 times. These 2 things are inextricably linked to one another. If you have envy, God owes me, so I hate you. You also have selfish ambition. Now, what is selfish ambition? It's the idea that grows out of your heart. It's the idea that grows out of my heart that I am the sun around which everything in life is to revolve. Okay? In my heart, that's how I want life to go. I want life to be all about me. Anybody else feel that way? When I go home, I want it to be all about me at home. I want my wife to greet me at the door and say, hey, babe, I'm sure you had a rough day at work, so I've got some dinner ready, and the kids are gone. I mean, I didn't get rid of them because I know you like to play with them once in a while, but they are gone tonight. You don't even have to worry about them. And here's dinner. It's you and me and dinner, and what do you want to do? You want to watch the game? You want to go to a movie? What do you do? It's all about you. That's what I want when I get home. When I go to the office, I want it to be, in my heart, I want it to be all about me. When I'm driving, I want it to be all about me. Get out of my way, get out of my lane, that you don't cut me off. It is all about me. In my heart and in your heart, that's what James calls selfish ambition, this idea that I am the sun around which life is to revolve. And he said, that is the soil out of which envy grows. He said, and if your life is marked by selfish ambition, if you think you're the sun, and everything's about you, he says, first of all, that's earthly. Earthly means it has no context of eternity. You are only focused on birth to death, and that is it. You are not even remotely thinking about what does your life look like 10 billion years from now in eternity. Earthly as in you are so consumed with getting yours in this life, and this life is just a blip compared to the length of eternity, but you are so concerned about this life, you do all kinds of foolish and stupid things that destroy community. This is why people go into debt to buy things they cannot afford, because we lose sight of this. We get stuck in the earthly and lose sight of the heavenly. But he says this kind of quote-unquote wisdom is earthly. It is unspiritual. Okay, if you think you're the sun and everything is to revolve around you, you're unspiritual. And he says, you are demonic. Now, where did he get that idea from? Because that's a little bit extreme. Once again, James got the idea from Jesus. In fact, he got it from a very specific place in the life of Jesus. One time, Jesus was with his disciples. It was Mark chapter 8, and it was at the height of his popularity. And there were thousands of people always crowding around Jesus. He was like a Grateful Dead concert walking around, and everyone just follows him wherever he goes. This is awesome. If you're under the age of 40, you can Google that, and you'll find out what that's all about. And he was doing miracles, and people loved him, and crowds loved him. And that meant the disciples were in demand. They were very popular people. They were nobody before Jesus came along, and then Jesus came along, and they're somebody. And now Jesus said, hey guys, listen up. I know there's a lot of people and a lot of crowds, and I'm very much in demand right now, but here's what you need to know. I'm going to Jerusalem, and one of you, Judas, is going to betray me, and I'm going to be arrested, and I'm going to be tried, and they're going to crucify me, and then on the third day I'm going to come back to life. All right? On 3. Ready? Break. Peter pulled Jesus aside and he said, Jesus, don't go negative. Look, you got a good thing going. Look how popular you are. Don't talk about dying and going to jail and all that. Don't go negative. Ride the popularity. Do you know how bad this is for me if you get crucified? I mean, before you came along, I was an uneducated fisherman, but now I'm somebody. People come to me to get to you. I'm important. And he rebuked Jesus for talking about dying for the sins of the world. Mark chapter 8 verse 33 says, but when Jesus turned and looked at his disciples, how embarrassing would this be? We're told, Mark tells us that Peter pulled Jesus aside to rebuke him quietly. Jesus turns around and looks at everybody, gets everyone's attention. He rebuked Peter, and here's what he said. Get behind me, who? No, you got to say it like the church lady. There you go. If you're under the age of 40, Google that. You'll find it. Get behind me, Satan, he said. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely what? Human concerns. Jesus said, if you do not have in mind the things that God is concerned about, but just human concerns, that's satanic. Okay, we think of horns and pentagrams and goat's head and blood and all this stuff when we think of satanic. Jesus said, I'll tell you what satanic is. It's all about your deal, not my deal. It's all about your kingdom, not my kingdom. It's all about you. You think you are the sun that everything revolves around. But here's the reality. Again, if you're taking notes, you can fill in this blank. To prioritize my concerns over God's concerns is demonic. It's demonic. James said so. Jesus said so. Now, here's the reality. And this is going to burst your bubble, but it's going to be the most liberating thing you hear all day. God is not primarily concerned about you. Okay? Tracking with me? God's primary concern in his existence is not your happiness. God's primary concern is not to establish you as the sun around which life revolves. God is primarily for God. Nobody wrote that down. God is primarily for God. He is primarily for his glory. He is primarily for His kingdom. He is primarily for His name and His renown and His reputation. And that is the greatest news I can share with you tonight, because what that means is you are not the center of life. God is the center of life. See, God can't make you the most important thing in His life, because if God did that, God would be committing idolatry. He would be worshiping a false god. God's primary concern is not you and your happiness and, oh, I just want it to be all about you, because then God would be an idolater. God's primary concern is His glory and His reputation and His name. God's primary concern is God, because who is higher for Him to be concerned about and whose glory is greater than His own? Which means that God is the center of life, and everything in your life is to revolve around God. And when you do that, when you put off selfish ambition and say, God is the center of my life will revolve around Him, your life gets better. And the pressure goes off. Because now it's not about you. And if it's not about you, you're no longer putting your crazy expectations on everyone and everything around you to revolve around you as if you are the sun. See, when I walk into my home, it's not about me. It's about God and His glory, which means I'm free. I don't have to put crazy expectations on my family. I'm just there to love and serve my wife and my sons. Because in doing that, I glorify God. And then when I walk into my office, I don't have to get my way. In fact, a lot of times I'll walk into my office and I'm like, I got this great idea. They say, Jason, that's a terrible idea. And everyone just outvotes me. And I'm the leader, but I'm like, all right, I can yield to the wisdom of the group. It's not about me. Okay, and when I'm driving down the road and people are driving in the wrong lane, it's not personal. They didn't cut me off because it's about me. They're just a moron who can't drive. But it's not about me. I don't have to get upset about that, because I'm not the sun around which life revolves. They're just a bad driver. That's all it is. When life is about God and His glory, the pressure is off of you, and all your stupid expectations go away. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but people who are filled with selfish ambition and envy are miserable people. They are miserable because they've got these expectations and life never lives up to their expectations. They're constantly angry, constantly frustrated. Things are never going the way they think things should go. And as a result, they have no community around them. They are destroying community because it's all about them, and they're filled with envy because I think life should be about me and you have what I want and I deserve it, so I'm mad at you. James says that's earthly, that is unspiritual, that is demonic, because God is about God and life is about God, which means you find joy and happiness when your life is about God and His glory. So he's going to describe that kind of wisdom next, verse 17. But the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure. Pure means it is unadulterated, it is 100%, it is virgin, it is not tainted by worldliness, it is pure. Then he said, peace-loving. Peace-loving isn't, I have inner peace in my soul. Peace-loving means in my relationships, in my horizontal relationships, I love creating and fostering peace. I love prioritizing the relationship over the issue we're making peace. Considerate means I don't have to blow up when I don't get my way, because there's other ways besides my way, and I'm open to that. Submissive, what that means is that you are persuadable. You are patient and willing to listen because it doesn't have to be about my deal again. Full of mercy because God is full of mercy. And good fruit, which means it doesn't talk about how much it knows. It does. It serves. It loves. Impartial and sincere. Impartial means not biased. Sincere means it's the real deal. It's genuine. There's no duplicity. There's no false motives. It's sincere. Verse 18. Verse that is so important but doesn't make any sense. Peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness. What does that mean? Well, it's an agricultural term. And he says there's a seed you can plant. The seed is peace. And if you are a peacemaker, if you make peace in your relationships, and if you make peace in your community, whether it's family, church, or society, if you are a peacemaker and you sow peace, at the end of a season, there will be a harvest. What's the fruit that grows out of that according to James? Righteousness. We still don't know what that means. Now, righteousness is a very important word in the Bible, but it's a word that has a very wide lexical range. In other words, the context influences our understanding of what the word means. At its basic level, Righteousness means I have a right standing or a right relationship with someone or something else, okay? Now, when it's used for God, righteousness means you have a right standing with God. It's all right with God. Here's another way I often explain it. Righteousness, it's a validating performance record that opens doors of access. Okay, so let's say you want a new job, but you need to open access to this employer to convince them to hire you, so you need some kind of validating performance record. What do? You get out your resume, you clean it up, you update it, and you say, "Excuse me, Mr. or Ms. Employer, I have a validating performance record that shows you should give me a job," and you give them the resume. Or if you want to get into the right school, you send your transcripts over to that school. "Excuse me, admissions director, you should let me into your school, and the reason why is, did you notice my transcripts?" It's a validating performance record that opens doors of access. When it comes to your relationship with God, we want access to God. We want to get to God and we want to live in His presence forever, but we need a validating performance record to get into the presence of God, and we didn't earn one. Jesus said, "I've got one for you. You can have my righteousness. You can have my validating performance record." And because of the life Christ lived, it's credited to you. God looks at His life and says, "All right, you're in. You have access to me because of what Jesus did." So that's one sense in the way that righteousness is used. You have access to God because of what Jesus did on your behalf. It's all right between you and God. Now, on the other end of the lexical range, righteousness is used to describe the community. Horizontal relationships, things are all right between you and me. We have access to one another. Things are good between us because there is righteousness in our relationship, because we are living in ways that are upright and honest and ethical, and there's trust and there's love and there's community. When James in this book uses the word righteousness, he always dips into a little bit of both meanings. But here what you're going to notice is his primary leaning is towards the community, towards the one another. And he says, if you are a man or woman who sows peace, that's the seed that you plant in all your relationships. I am prioritizing the relationship over the issue. I am going to be humble and therefore show my wisdom through deeds done in humility so that we can have peace. He says, you will have a harvest. What's the harvest? Righteousness. You will have right standing in your community, family, church, society. You will have healthy community if you are a peacemaker who sows in peace. Now, here's where James gets real practical. That's all very, okay, you're like, okay, that's very nice, that's very true, you can't really push back against that. But this is the part I warned you about before we got started, because James is going to turn the corner and he is going to get so practical with what this means in your life, it gets painful for a lot of us. He turns the corner, next verse, James chapter 4, verse 1. He asks the question, all right, so we've talked on the theoretical level about peace and righteousness, and now he brings it down to earth, because that's what James does. And he asks this question, what causes fights and quarrels among you? Now, I thought it would be fun if I took 2 minutes and I said, turn to the person next to you, the person you came to church with tonight, and ask this question, what causes fights and quarrels among you? But then I realized I can't do that, because if I did that, fights and quarrels would break out among you over what causes fights and quarrels among you, because you would say, well, I know what causes fights and quarrels among us. You cause fights and quarrels. Oh, I do? Well, I'll tell you who caused them. You cause fights and quarrels. What we do when understanding what destroys community, we don't look to selfish ambition and we don't look to envy. What do we look to find the destroyer of community in our lives? What other people are doing wrong. And we blame other people in our family, in our church, and in our society for our lack of community. Now, here's what you need to know about blame. When you blame someone else for your relational conflict, when you say it's your fault that our marriage is what it is, it's your fault that our relationship is what it is, it's your fault that our company culture is what it is, let me show you what you are doing. Imagine that we could take all of your happiness and all of your peace in life and we could put it into a box. And we could carefully package it and put bubble wrap around your happiness and tape up the box and put a bow on it. When you blame someone, you are taking your happiness in this box and you are handing it to the person you are in conflict with, and you are saying, here is my happiness. Will you hold it for me and give it back when you're ready? I'll be over here being miserable and bitter. Thanks. When you blame someone else for your relationship conflict, you are giving them control of your happiness, and you are saying, when you behave the way I think you should behave, when you say the words I think you should say, when you begin to treat me the way I think I should be treated, then I will be happy again. But until you do that, I clearly cannot have happiness. So just hang on to my happiness. But if you're taking notes again, this is so critical. Blame gives away control of your happiness. It just gives it away. See, James wants to know what causes fights and quarrels among you. Your first reaction, they do. He does. She does. It's their fault. James is like, no, you're doing it. You are giving away control of your happiness. You are not taking responsibility for what is under your authority. So, what is the answer to the question? What causes fights and quarrels among you? Think about your last fight. Some of you are like, well, that's easy. It was 50 minutes ago on my drive to church tonight. That was my last fight and quarrel among us, okay? Go ahead, think last 7 days. Think about conflict. What caused that conflict? James is about to reveal what it is. You say, well, there can't be one cause. I mean, look across this room, all the different kinds of conflict we had in the room, all the different kinds of things that destroyed community. There's not one thing that destroyed all this community. James said there is. There is one thing at the root of all of your conflict. Here's what it is. This is so painful. Don't they come, your fights and quarrels, don't they come from your desires that battle within you? You desire, but you do not have, so you kill. You covet, but you cannot get what you want. So you quarrel and fight. Let's fill in this blank. In every personal conflict, you aren't getting what you want. And because you aren't getting what you want, you engage in conflict with the people around you. Go ahead. Think about your last conflict. The biggest conflict you had in the last 7 days. You know what was true about that conflict? You weren't getting what you want. And because you weren't getting what you want, you engaged in conflict. And James says, if you take this far enough, if you are not getting what you want, you will kill. Here's what he means. Some of you have killed relationships because you couldn't get what you wanted. Some of you have killed marriages because you couldn't get what you wanted. Some of you have been in a relationship that was killed because someone else couldn't get what they wanted. When you can't get what you want, people are willing to kill relationships. They covet, they desire, but they can't have what they want, so relationships and community suffer. You say, Jason, but you don't understand. It's not what I want. I think I'm owed that. I think I deserve that. They promised, he said, she promised. It's not what I want. This is about what's good for the people in my life. Okay, I just want you to know something. I agree with you and I think you're right. Okay, I do. I think what you want is the right thing. But even though it's the right thing, the godly thing, the good thing, the reality is that's still the thing at the root of all your conflict. You are not getting what you want. So you kill. You covet. You destroy relationships. But isn't it true that so much of what we want isn't actually good or godly or for the benefit of the other person, but we're still rooted in selfish ambition. And I still want to be the sun around which all of life revolves, and that is the thing that is destroying community in my life and in your life. Now, when my kids were little, my poor kids, they're going to need so much therapy when they grow up. When my kids were little, they would argue about, pretty serious matters like whose Pokemon card is that? Really important things in life. And when they're all, in their conflict with one another and they're fighting with one another, I'm like, all right, everybody huddle up, come here, all right. Everyone, I don't even know what the conflict, they're just arguing about something. I'm like, all right, everyone repeat after me, the benevolent dad, everyone repeat after me. They're like, okay, where's he going? Like, I know what the problem is. And they stare at me. I'm like, come on, say it. So you guys all got to do this. So when you're doing this, think about your last conflict that you had this week. Are you ready? Bring it up front and center, your last conflict, and repeat after me. I know what the problem is. I'm not getting what I want. Well, that was no fun, was it? Okay, stop copying after me. When I would say that, even when my kids were little, do you know what would happen to the temperature in the room? The temperature in the room would go down as suddenly everyone realizes what's really the source of their fighting and quarreling. It's not their brother. It's me. It's my heart. I'm not getting what I want. James then takes it up another level now that we know what the source of conflict is. Verse 2, he says, you do not have because you do not ask God. What if that thing that you want, what if instead of trying to squeeze it out of the people around you, what if you went to the one who actually gives the gifts to people in the first place? What if instead of feeling envy because they have what you don't have or you'll never have, what if instead of trying to squeeze your happiness out of that person, what if you went to the good Father who gives every good and perfect gift from above? What if you took that unmet desire, that want you have that is not met, and you took it to God? You said, Jason, I tried that once and it didn't work. Here's why. He's not done. Verse 3. But when you ask, you do not receive because you ask with wrong motives that you may spend what you get on your pleasures. That's no fun, is it? James says the reason why is because it's all about selfish ambition still. Why would God give you something that is helping and reinforcing this idea that you're the sun around which I am to revolve? I can't believe how many times as a pastor, Christians will make decisions and rationalize their decisions to me, and their rationalization is, well, God wants me to be happy. Where did you get that from? See, I can be rude with you because you're not my church. Where did you get the idea? I love preaching at the core. Where did you get the idea that God wants you to be happy? Where did that come from? This selfish ambition that says, I am the sun around which all of life is to revolve. I mean, surely God loves me and He wants to revolve around me because He thinks I'm awesome, and I agree. He's right. I am pretty awesome. See, if you're a parent and if you have little kids, oh my goodness, if you gave them everything they asked for, you would be a horrible parent, wouldn't you? Because they can't see what is beyond instant gratification, and God's looking at your life and what you want and what's causing conflict and quarrel among you, and He's like, so much of what you want, it's just about your instant gratification. It's just about what you want in the moment. It's not about what's good for you in this life and in the next life. And I love you too much. I'm going to spare you from that. So, here's your homework for next time on how to take everything that James has talked about in this session about what kills community and how to apply it to your lives. Here's what I want you to do. For the next 7 days, right now, think about your next 7 days. I bet you can already forecast with about 90% accuracy what relational conflict you will experience in the next 7 days. Isn't that true? If you think about home, you think about work, you think about church, you think about society, you can already, the route you take to work and the stupid red lights, you can already forecast what conflict you will experience in the next 7 days. Go ahead, think about what all of that is. Now, before you get to Monday, before you get to Tuesday or Wednesday, and you can already guess, I'm going to have that conflict, here's your homework, and it's a prayer, and it's our last fill in the blank today. Here's what you pray. God, here's what I want. Is it what you want? God, here's what I want in my relationships. Here's what I want to happen at work. Here's what I want in my life. But what do you want? God, I want you to search my heart. I want you to examine my motives. I want what you want. So here's what I want. Is this what you want? And don't just keep this on the surface like, dear God, I want a Ferrari for me. Is that what you want for me? No, don't just leave it on the surface like that. What's beneath that want? What's the desire beneath the desire? What's the want beneath the want? On the surface, you might want your boss to do things your way. What is it you really want beneath that? Recognition? Status? Importance? Esteem? What is it you really want? Because let me tell you something about the desire beneath the desire. There's only one place where you can go to finally and fully have complete acceptance, significance, and validation for your existence. And that is in Jesus Christ. He has given your life significance. He has given your life meaning. He has given you an identity as a child of God. He has given you the affirmation of God Himself. Until you dig down and see the want beneath your want and let Jesus meet that need, can you look at what you want on the surface and say, you know what? If God wants this for me, great. If He doesn't want this for me, I'm good. I don't have to envy you. I don't have to squeeze meaning in life out of you, because life isn't about me, it's about Jesus. It's about His glory, and I'm just thrilled I get to be a part of that and love Him and serve others. And that, James says, is wisdom. True wisdom that leads to healthy, peaceful relationships at home, in church, and in society. Let me pray for you. Father, thank you for preserving this amazing, amazing wisdom in the book of James. It's easy for me to stand on a stage and talk about it tonight. It is so hard for us to put this into practice because we've got some wants that scream at us so loudly. So, Father, give us insight into our own hearts that we would see where selfish ambition is driving our wants, and we would replace it with ambition for you and your kingdom, and that we would let life be about you so that we may have peace and happiness, and the community around us will be blessed. We ask this in the name of Jesus. Amen.